Hello everyone and welcome back to Mrs. B History. Today we're exploring one of the most important events in British history, the 1688 Glorious Revolution. Now I know what you're thinking, how can a revolution be glorious? Well, stick with me because this revolution changed England forever and understanding it is crucial for your GCSE course in crime and punishment, but also for general knowledge. So what actually happened in 1688? Well, England had a Catholic king called James II after Charles II died without a legitimate male heir. Many people in England were worried because James was trying to bring back Catholicism and rule like an absolute monarch, meaning he wanted all of the power with no limits. Annoyed at James dissolving Parliament and his style of kingship, a group of powerful Protestant nobles decided they'd had enough. They invited James's Protestant daughter Mary and her husband William of Orange to invade England and to take the throne as joint monarchs, something which had never happened in English history before. When William arrived with his army, James's own troops abandoned him and James fled to France. This led to William and Mary becoming joint monarchs. The amazing thing was that this happened with almost no bloodshed, hence the name Glorious Revolution. But the real significance wasn't how it happened, it was the changes which happened in England as a result. So let's explore why this matters so much. Here's arguably the biggest significance. The Glorious Revolution ended the idea that English kings could rule however they wanted. For decades, Stuart kings had claimed that they had a divine right, meaning that God had chosen them to rule and nobody could question them. Both Charles I and James II had dissolved Parliament to rule England without their support or advice. William and Mary owed their position to Parliament, as they had only acquired the throne through the invitation of Parliament. This meant that Parliament was now much more powerful than the monarch. The balance of power had shifted, showing that they as King and Queen ruled because Parliament had allowed them to, and not because God had automatically given them power. This was revolutionary. England was moving towards the idea that the country should be run by laws and Parliament, not by whatever the King or Queen wanted. This is a key turning point in how England was governed. In 1689, William and Mary had to agree to the Bill of Rights before they could be crowned. This document was absolutely crucial and one of the most important legal documents in British history. The Bill of Rights said that the monarch couldn't suspend laws without Parliament's agreement, meaning he could no longer try to rule as an absolute monarch. The monarch couldn't raise taxes without Parliament's permission, which meant that taxation would be fairer and only granted when Parliament deemed extraordinary revenue was required. There had to be free elections to Parliament, allowing for a more democratic basis. MPs had freedom of speech in Parliament, debates without the fear of imprisonment or other punishment. There couldn't be a standing army in peacetime without Parliament's consent, stopping the potential of a military dictatorship, as had been seen under the protectorate of Oliver Cromwell. People had the right to petition the king without being punished, improving the freedom of speech and people's right to be heard. It also meant people were free from cruel and unusual punishment. Can you see what's happening here? The monarch's power was being seriously limited by the law. The Glorious Revolution had established something vital, the rule of law. This meant that everyone, even the king or queen, had to follow the law. Nobody was above it. Before 1688, kings could imprison people without trial, ignore court decisions and change laws whenever they felt like it. After 1688, this became illegal. The monarch had to follow the same laws as everybody else. This idea that it is the rule of law which is supreme and not the ruler became a foundation of British democracy. It also influenced legal systems around the world, including the American Constitution. When we talk about human rights and fair trials today, we're building on ideas that came from 1688. Religion was absolutely central to the Glorious Revolution. Remember, a crucial reason for Parliament inviting William of Orange and Mary to take the English throne was that James II was Catholic and was trying to bring Catholicism back to England. Many English people were terrified of this because they associated Catholicism with tyranny and foreign control by the Pope. William and Mary were both Protestants, and their reign secured England as a Protestant country. In 1689, Parliament passed the Toleration Act, which gave freedom of worship to Protestant dissenters, people like Baptists and Quakers who weren't part of the Church of England, trying to ensure that England was more tolerant towards some religious sects. However, and this is important, Catholics were still excluded from this tolerance. Catholics still couldn't vote, hold public office, or worship freely. Many of these freedoms were taken away from them after the 1605 Gunpowder Plot. This religious discrimination would continue for over 100 years. In 1701, Parliament passed the Act of Settlement to make sure that England would always have a Protestant monarch. This law said that only Protestants could inherit the throne. Catholics or anyone married to a Catholic were completely banned from becoming the king or queen. This law is still technically in force today, though it's been modified. It shows how the Glorious Revolution permanently changed England's religious identity. The monarch had to be Protestant, and that was non-negotiable. This also meant that Parliament was now deciding who could be monarch based on religion, not just bloodline. This shows how Parliament's power was growing even stronger. In the short term, the Glorious Revolution created both relief and anxiety. Protestants celebrated because they felt safe from Catholic tyranny, such as the rule of James II. The country had also avoided a bloody civil war, which everyone remembered from the 1640s, and which had resulted in many deaths, civil upheaval, and the execution of the king, and then ruled by the Lord Protector, Oliver Cromwell, and his major generals. However, Catholics faced increased suspicion and persecution. They were seen as potential traitors who might support James II's attempts to reclaim the throne. Catholic families lost rights, couldn't attend university, and faced discrimination. There was also the problem of the Jacobites, supporters of James II and his descendants. For decades, there were Jacobite rebellions trying to restore the Stuart line, causing instability and fear, especially in Scotland and Ireland. Over the long term, the Glorious Revolution transformed English politics. Parliament met every year, not just when the monarch felt like calling it. Parliament controlled finances, which meant the monarch needed Parliament's cooperation to run the country. Political parties were to develop, the Whigs and the Tories who competed for power in Parliament. This created the foundation for modern democracy, with different parties offering different ideas about how to govern. The Prime Minister's role also developed because the monarch needed ministers who could work with Parliament. By the 1700s, Britain was becoming a constitutional monarchy, where the monarch reigns but doesn't really rule. Real power belonged to Parliament and the Prime Minister. The Glorious Revolution didn't just affect nobles and politicians. By limiting royal power and strengthening Parliament, it helped the growing middle class, such as merchants, lawyers, businessmen, to gain more influence. These people got richer through trade and business, and they wanted a say in how the country was run. The revolution created a system where wealth and property gave you political power, not just noble birth. This led to economic growth because business people felt more secure. They knew the king couldn't just seize their property or impose random taxes. Laws were now more predictable and fair. This stability helped Britain become a major economic power in the 1700s. For crime and punishment, the Glorious Revolution was crucial because it changed how justice worked. Remember the rule of law we talked about? After 1688, judges became more independent from royal interference. Trial by jury was protected. People couldn't be imprisoned without knowing the charges against them. Cruel and unusual punishments required legal justification, and the legal system became more focused on evidence and proper procedure. This didn't mean the system became soft. In fact, punishments were still harsh, but there were now legal rules that even the king had to follow. Justice became less about the monarch's personal wishes and more about established law. The ideas from the Glorious Revolution didn't stay in England, they spread around the world. The concept that government should be limited by law, that rulers should be accountable, and that people have rights influenced revolutions and constitutions globally. The American Revolution in 1776 was directly inspired by 1688 ideas. The Founding Fathers looked back to the Bill of Rights of 1689 when they wrote the American Constitution. Ideas about free speech, fair trials, and limiting government power all connect back to the Glorious Revolution. Even the French Revolution in 1789 was partly inspired by British ideas about limiting monarchy and establishing rights. The Glorious Revolution showed the world that you could change how a country was governed without total chaos. So why do we call it glorious? Well, partly because it happened with very little violence compared to other revolutions. Unlike the English Civil War in the 1640s, which killed thousands, or the French Revolution, which led to mass executions, the Glorious Revolution achieved massive change relatively peacefully. But glorious also reflects the Protestant viewpoint. They saw it as glorious victory for Protestantism and liberty over Catholic tyranny. Of course, Catholics and Jacobites definitely didn't see it as glorious. History often reflects the winner's perspective. The name also suggests something magnificent and important, which it was. The Glorious Revolution changed the entire direction of British history and influenced democratic development. Now let's be balanced here. The Glorious Revolution was significant, but it didn't create equality or democracy as we understand it today. Who benefited? Well, it was mainly wealthy Protestant men, nobles, landowners, and rich merchants. They got more power and protection. But there were also many who didn't benefit. Women still had no political rights at all. Poor people couldn't vote and had little power. And Catholics faced discrimination for another 140 years. The working class still remained excluded from politics. It would take another 230 years before all adults in Britain could vote. So while 1688 was a crucial step forward in democracy, it was only the beginning of a very long journey. So let's bring it together. The Glorious Revolution of 1688 was significant because politically it ended absolute monarchy and it increased the role of Parliament legally. It established the rule of law and limited royal power through the Bill of Rights. Religiously, it secured England as a Protestant nation permanently. Socially, it gave more power to the wealthy middle class and created political stability. Long term, it laid foundations for modern democracy, influenced revolutions worldwide, and created the constitutional monarchy system we still face today. If this part of your GCSE, remember, 1688 marks a turning point in how England was governed and how justice was administered. It's a key moment in understanding how crime and punishment changed over time. And that's the Glorious Revolution of 1688. A bloodless revolution that changed everything about how England was governed and created foundations for modern democracy that are still important today. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps other students find it. And don't forget to subscribe to Mrs. B History for more history revision videos. Hit the notification bell so you'll never miss an upload. Drop a comment below and let me know. Do you think the Glorious Revolution deserves its name, or should we call it something else? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Good luck with your revision, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep learning, and remember, history isn't just about dates, it's about understanding how our world came to be. See you next time.